Galadriel. Galadriel was the Lady of the Woods of Lothlórien, which she ruled with Celeborn, her husband. One of the greatest of the elves in Middle-earth, she surpassed nearly all others in beauty, knowledge, and power. She bore Nenya, one of the 3 elven rings of power. J.R.R. Tolkien deemed her as one of the mightiest and fairest of all elves remaining in Middle-earth in the Third Age. She was the only daughter and youngest child of Finarfin, Prince of the Noldor, and Irwin, whose cousin was Luthien. Her elder brothers were Finrod Felagund, Ordreth, Onrod, and Egnor. Galadriel was a niece of Fëanor, the most important elf of the early First Age. Biography. Years of the Trees. Galadriel was born in Valinor in the Years of the Trees, before the First Age. Much of Galadriel's story is confusing, and there are several distinct tales told about her collected in Unfinished Tales. According to the older account, used in the Silmarillion, Galadriel was an eager participant and leader in the rebellion of the Noldor and their flight from Valinor due to her desire to one day rule over lands in Middle-earth herself. She was eager to see Middle-earth, having heard of it from Fëanor, and desired to rule a realm of her own. She swore no oaths and was like-minded to her cousin Fingon, son of Fingolfin. However, separated from Fëanor and his kin, she and her people did not take part in the kinslaying at Alqualond. They followed Fingolfin instead and crossed the Helcarax in the far north. Although in the latest version of the story, Galadriel's story changed significantly, far from joining Fëanor's rebellion, she opposed him in nearly everything. And that she wished to leave Valinor and go to the vast world of Middle-earth, to give free rein there to her talents. She went for a time to live with her mother's relatives in Alqualond, where she met her future husband, Celeborn. Together they planned to build a ship and sail to Middle-earth, and they were about to ask permission to the Vala when Melkor with Ungoliant destroyed the Light of the Trees. In Fëanor's rebellion that followed, Galadriel had no part and together with Celeborn, fought against Fëanor defending her mother's kin in defense of Alqualond, and Celeborn's ship was spared of the attack of the Noldor. Galadriel was horrified by Fëanor's violence and cruelty, and sailed in the night to Middle-earth without waiting for Manwë's permission. First Age. Once in Beleriand, she lived nominally with one of her brothers, most likely Finrod, but spent much time at the court of Thingol and Melian in Menegroth, where she arrived in FA 52 and was welcomed because of her family relationship to Thingol's brother Olwe, Galadriel's maternal grandfather. She met Celeborn, a kinsman of Thingol, in Doriath. She also traveled to visit her brother, Finrod, in his realm of Nargothrond multiple times. Her 3 other brothers were killed during various battles in the First Age. Galadriel became friends with Melian the Maya, who wanted to know the cause of the exile of the Noldor. Galadriel only briefly narrated the story to her, leaving out the death of Finwë, the kinslaying at Alqualond, and the burning of the ships at Loskar. She dwelt in Nargothrond with her brother Finrod, and asked him if he would take no wife. But Finrod had taken an oath only for himself, and his beloved had been left in Valinor. She had no role in the major wars of the First Age, believing that defeating Morgoth was beyond the power of the Eldar. When Morgoth was defeated by the coming of the Vala out of the west, she, having played no part in the earlier kinslaying, was offered safe return to Valinor. However, she chose not to leave Middle-earth, and was the only leader of the Noldor exiles to remain after the First Age. Second Age. Celeborn and Galadriel traveled first to Lindon, where they ruled over a group of elves as a fiefdom under Gil-galad, the High King of the Noldor. Sometime later, they had a daughter, Celebrian. They moved eastward and established the realm of Eregion, or Hallan, which they ruled under Gil-galad. Eregion, to the west of the Misty Mountains near Khazad-dûm, was a prosperous kingdom during this time and had open trade with the dwarves. Also, during this time, they made contact with a Nandarin settlement in the valley of the Anduin, later to be known as Lothlórien. Subsequently, when Celebrimbor took over the rule of Eregion, Galadriel left by way of the mines of Khazad-dûm. After the death of King Amdur, in the War of the Last Alliance, and the departure of his son Amroth, Celeborn and Galadriel became the Lord and Lady of Lothlórien. In the Second Age, the Maya Annatar, Lord of Gifts, guided Celebrimbor and the other Noldor of Eregion in the creation of the Rings of Power. Galadriel had immediate distrust in Annatar, which was later justified when he was revealed to be Sauron. Galadriel counseled Celebrimbor in the hiding of the rings, and when Eregion was attacked, she was entrusted with one of the 3 rings of the elves. Her ring was Nenya, the Ring of Water. Conscious of Sauron's power and wishing to thwart it, she did not use the powers of her ring as long as the One Ring was in Sauron's hands. However, during the Third Age, when the One Ring was lost, she put it to good use protecting the borders of her realm, for the powers of her ring were protection, preservation, and concealment from evil. Third Age. Through Celebrian's wedding to Elrond, Galadriel was the grandmother of Elladan, Elrohir, and Arwen. The tales tell little of Galadriel or of Celeborn during many centuries in the Third Age, but after the formation of the White Council in TA 2463 she put forth her might in opposition of Sauron. During the invasion of the Balchoth, Galadriel provided aid to Eorl the Young and the Eotheod in the form of a white mist that protected them both from the evils of Sauron in Dol Guldur and the sight of their enemies. This allowed the Eotheod to ride unnoticed to the battle of the field of Celebrant. They would become the Rohirrim but regarded her and the Goldenwood with fear. She played a pivotal role in the formation of the White Council, though her counsel to put Gandalf at its head was not followed. War of the Ring. Just prior to the War of the Ring, Galadriel hosted the Fellowship of the Ring after their escape from the mines of Moria. Once in Caras Galadhon, Galadriel allowed Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee to peer into the mirror of Galadriel, enabling them to glimpse possible events of the future. She, in turn, was tested when Frodo later offered to place the One Ring in her keeping. To illustrate what would happen if she accepted, she presented an image of herself corrupted by the ring, declaring, "In place of the Dark Lord you will set up a queen. And I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night. Fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain. Dreadful as the storm and the lightning. Stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair." Then swiftly she returned to her original form, seemingly smaller and frailier than before, declaring, "I pass the test," refusing the ring and accepting the fate of diminishing, as the time of the dominion of men had come and returning at last to Valinor. As the fellowship departed, she gave each member a gift and an elven cloak, and outfitted the party with boats and supplies. Gimli, in particular, was touched by Galadriel's nobility and beauty, and asked for one strand of her golden hair as an heirloom of his house. She generously gave him 3, having refused the same request from Fëanor, which he later set in an impregnable crystal. Apart from the strands of hair given to Gimli, she gave a Malorn seed and a small box of earth from her garden to Samwise Gamgee, a green elfstone set in silver to Aragorn, along with a scabbard for his sword Andúril, and a belt each to Boromir, Merry, and Pippin. To Legolas she gave a long, stout bow of the Galadrim. To Frodo, she gave a magical phial which captured the light of Arundel's star, which Frodo and Sam would later use to great effect to pass through Shelob's lair to complete their quest. After the departure of the Fellowship, Galadriel acted to ensure the success of the quest. It was she who summoned Gwaihir to rescue Gandalf off the peak of Celebdil, and it was she who nursed him back to health, dressing him in white, symbolizing his status as the new leader of the Order of Wizards. Later, she sent word to Aragorn about the paths of the dead, and messages to the Rangers of the North, leading to the southward ride of the Grey Company. As Sauron put forth all his power during the War of the Ring, he was aware of the threat of the Elves and their ancient potency, so he sent armies to besiege many of their settlements in the north, while simultaneously assailing the major cities of men and dwarves. Lórien itself was assaulted 3 times, but the armies of Dol Guldur were driven back due to the courage of the Elves and the power of Galadriel's ring. It is said that the power of her ring could not be overcome unless Sauron himself would come to do battle. After the fall of Sauron she, with Thranduil of Mirkwood and their elven allies, crossed the Anduin to Dol Guldur, where they tore down its walls and laid bare its pits. She then traveled to Minas Tirith for the wedding of King Elessar and Lady Arwen and returned to Lórien until TA 3021 when she journeyed to the Grey Havens and, with the remaining ring-bearers, took a ship and returned at last to the Undying Lands whence she had come so long ago. Early life and first attempts to hunt Sauron. She is first seen as a child, while dwelling in Valinor, making a paper ship as her brother Finrod taught her. Finrod gave her counsel after preventing her from striking another child as retaliation for destroying the ship. Many years passed, and, following the catastrophe in which Morgoth destroyed the 2 trees, Finrod joined his kindred in sailing to Middle-earth and waging war against Morgoth. At some point, while dancing in a glade, she met Celeborn, whom she soon married. After he left to take part in the War of the Jewels, however, he vanished, and was presumed dead. Though the Dark Lord was eventually defeated, his chief servant Sauron escaped, and Finrod took the lead in finding him. Sauron killed Finrod, however, and Galadriel pledged to continue his mission. By the middle of the Second Age, Galadriel had led an expedition into Forodwaith to search for evidence of Sauron's whereabouts. Despite her companion's hesitancy and the harsh environment, an abandoned fortress of Morgoth is found, within which Galadriel and Thondor discover evidence of dark magic and an anvil bearing Sauron's sigil, still hot after centuries. Her company is attacked by a snow troll, which Galadriel quickly slays. Upon announcing her intent to continue the expedition farther north, the others of her company refuse, and she unwillingly returns with them to Lindon. On returning to Lindon, she is met by her friend Elrond, who, though glad to see her, warns her that the High King Gil-galad disapproves of her insistence that Sauron still poses a threat to elfkind. Galadriel agrees to hold her tongue, and is honored with the rest of her companions by the king, who gives them the gift of returning to Valinor. Galadriel leaves on the ship to Valinor with the others, but at the last moment before leaving the mortal realm, changes her mind and dives into the sea. Sundering Seas and Numenor. After some time, she is found by several castaways on a makeshift raft, one of whom identifies himself as Halbrand, but in truth is Sauron in disguise. The castaways are terrified of the great sea serpent that had destroyed their ship, and soon their fears are realized when the serpent returns and kills all but Halbrand, who retains the raft. Halbrand takes interest in Galadriel while remaining silent about his own story. Yet when a fierce storm arises and Galadriel is dragged under the surface by a weighted rope, Halbrand rescues her and the two survive, though the exertion left them weak. They then drift helplessly until they are found by a ship of the Númenóreans, helmed by Elendil. Elendil takes Galadriel and Halbrand back to Armenellos, capital of Numenor, and brings the two before Queen Regent Miriel. Galadriel immediately demands passage back to Middle-earth, inciting the ire of the Númenóreans, though Halbrand is able to negotiate a tentative peace while Miriel decides what to do. Miriel appoints Elendil to keep watch over Galadriel in the meantime, which initially irks the elf until Elendil reveals himself to be an elf friend and a speaker of Quenya. Elendil takes Galadriel to the Great Hall of Lore at her request, and something of significance is soon discovered in its archives, an ancient document bearing the same sigil as was left on Finrod's body. From this document, Galadriel discovers that the sigil is a crude map signifying the region of the Southlands, which Sauron apparently intends to conquer as his own. She also discovers a document bearing the same insignia as is borne by Halbrand, indicating him to be the rightful king of the Southlands, though Halbrand says he took it off a dead man. Returning to Armenellos, Galadriel is granted an audience with Miriel, and requests an army to counter Sauron in the Southlands. On being denied, Galadriel angrily demands an audience with Tar-Palantir, the actual ruler, and for this is thrown into prison, where Halbrand advises her to learn to be more nuanced in her approach. Soon, Pharazôn, Miriel's chief counselor, arrives to inform Galadriel she will be sent back alone to Middle-earth. Galadriel evades the guards and escapes, breaking into the tower where Tar-Palantir dwelt. Miriel had expected this and awaits her there, where Galadriel sees the aged king to be near the point of death. Miriel took Galadriel to a separate room where is kept a Palantir and has her look into the artifact, which shows Galadriel the same vision of Numenor's destruction that Miriel had witnessed herself. Nonetheless, Miriel makes Galadriel to depart alone as planned, though just as she enters her boat, the leaves of Nimloth began to fall, indicating a grave warning. Seeing this, Miriel changes her mind and announces that Numenor will send an army to the Southlands after all. In the days following, Galadriel assists in giving training to the recruit volunteers. Becoming aware that Halbrand desires not to go to Middle-earth but to remain in Numenor, Galadriel attempts to persuade him to accept the mantle of king, only after much argument succeeding. She departs Armenellos on the 10th day since Miriel's decision aboard one of 3 ships bound for Middle-earth. The Southlands. Galadriel catches sight of Middle-earth's coast well before the Númenóreans do, and briefly meets Isildur. The following day, having crossed the Ephel-Duath, she, Halbrand, and the Númenórean cavalry ride to Tir-Harad, halting Adar's aggression, though not before he acquires the artifact he searched for, a dark hilt forged by Morgoth. She kills many orcs at Tir-Harad, which Arondir and Bronwyn's refugees had fortified, and captures Adar with Halbrand's help, after entreating her horse to run quickly after him. She convinces Halbrand to spare Adar and takes him prisoner, learning of his origin as one of the original elves corrupted by Morgoth, and of his claim to have killed Sauron. Galadriel nearly cuts Adar's throat, desiring justice, but is stopped by Halbrand, who she later thanks, and is thanked in return for the help Halbrand perceives having received from her. Shortly after this, she and her allies realize they have been deceived, for Adar had switched the dark hilt with a decoy, and Waldreg had used the hilt to activate a mechanism causing Orodruin to erupt, sending forth flame and ash over all the Southlands. Though nearly smothered in ash, she survives the eruption and comes across Theo in the chaos, with whom she travels towards the Númenórean camp, both giving him counsel and helping him to evade orcs along the way. Upon arriving at the camp, she learns of Miriel's plans to leave and return to Middle-earth, and of Halbrand's status. She finds he has been severely wounded in the abdomen, and concludes he needs elvish medicine, and so rides with him to Eregion. Galadriel arrives 6 days later in Osten-Edhill, where Halbrand receives medical attention and soon recovers, finding his way to Celebrimber's forge and quickly gaining his trust by revealing his knowledge of metallurgy. Galadriel, however, becomes suspicious of Halbrand after Celebrimber voices a number of phrases she first heard from Adar, who had heard them from Sauron. Halbrand continues to act kindly towards her and make advances in helping Celebrimber in making a design from mithril that would keep the elves from fading due to the doom of Mandos. In the meantime, Galadriel discovers a document disproving Halbrand's claim as king of the Southlands, and she confronts him about his identity. Here Halbrand reveals himself to her as Sauron, and through a vision attempts to draw her to his side, arguing that he wishes to heal Middle-earth. Though persuasive, Galadriel ultimately rejects his offer, though she keeps his identity a secret so that Celebrimbor will go through with forging the needed artifacts. She opines to Celebrimbor that 3 rings are needed instead of Sauron's proposed 2, and the Mastersmith proceeds to forge the 3 rings, Vilya, Nenya, and Narya. Character: the Lady Galadriel, Lady of Light, grandmother of Lady Arwen, was an elven queen of extraordinary beauty, with her timeless features and golden river of hair. Galadriel was highly praised for her unrivaled beauty, particularly that of her hair, which was a deep and radiant gold, shot with silver. It was said by the Elves of Tirion to have ensnared the light of the 2 trees of Valinor, Telperion and Lorelin, and possibly to have inspired the creation of the Silmarils by Fëanor. She was also the tallest of elf women, standing at around 6 feet 4 inches, or 193 centimeters. Because of her wisdom and power, she had very important roles throughout the history of Middle-earth, especially during her time in Eregion and during the War of the Ring. She had a penchant for dressing in the purest white. She was known, especially in her younger days, as being quite prideful. However, by the end of the Third Age, that pride had been tempered a great deal by age. Powers: Galadriel possessed a tremendous amount of magical powers, and was said to be the greatest of the Noldor after Fëanor. When she still lived in the Undying Lands, she had been a pupil of Yavanna and All, and she later became a friend of Melian the Maya. Hence, it can be deduced that she had learned her powers from these 3 illustrious personages, though the nature of her magic is still not well understood. The majority of Galadriel's powers were said to stem from the artifact she controlled, Nenya, the Ring of Water. In some tales, she was also depicted with the powers of communicating over vast distances, predicting the future, and even cloaking her mind from other tremendously powerful beings. She once stated that Sauron could not perceive her mind, though she could perceive his. It is also possible that her powers of divination were either derived from or accentuated by her mirror, which could reveal events of the past, present, and future. However, due to her incredibly enigmatic nature, even the immensely skillful Saruman and an elf as perceptive as Elrond found it difficult to understand her powers, and they were such to bring doubt to the minds of the non-elven inhabitants of Middle-earth. Whatever they might have been, it must still be noted that Galadriel had used them for good, protecting Lórien from any attack. She also used this formidable power to destroy the very foundations of Dol Guldur, a fortress whose power was multiplied by Sauron's magic. Galadriel also possessed the skill of Osinwi, the ability to communicate with others through thoughts. This can be seen after the destruction of the One Ring, when Galadriel communicated mentally with Elrond and Gandalf on their return journey from Minas Tirith. Besides her magical powers, Galadriel was also very wise and intelligent. She was one of the very few who were not fooled by Sauron in the Second Age, and therefore suggested to Celebrimbor to hide the 3 rings. She also refrained from using the powers of Nenya while the One Ring was in Sauron's possession, and only did so after the One Ring was lost, for it was only then that it was safe enough for her to do so. When Frodo offered her the One Ring, Galadriel managed to reject the undeniable temptation, for she was wise enough to know that, though she might start off with good intentions with the One Ring in her possession, she would only become a tyrant as terrible as Sauron in the end. This could be viewed as a testament to her excellent understanding of the seductive nature of power, as well as her awareness of her own personal limitations. Naming and titles. Galadriel was originally named Artanis, noblewoman, her father name, and Nirwen, man-maiden, her mother name referring to her height and strength. Galadriel is the Sindarin translation of Telerin Quenya Alateriel, the name given her by Celeborn, meaning maiden crowned with a garland of bright radiance in reference to her hair. The name Galadriel was used outside Lórien by the people who did not know the ancient days in Galadriel's history, confusing her name with the Elvish word Galad, tree, and the name of the Galadrim, the people of Lórien. She is referred to as the Lady of Lórien, Lady of Light, the Lady of the Galadrim, or the Lady of the Wood interchangeably. Within the realm of Lothlórien, she was referred to as simply Lady Galadriel or the Lady. When she and Celeborn were being referred to collectively, they were known as the Lord and Lady. Faramir of Gondor referred to her as a mistress of magic when Frodo and Sam were with him in Henathanan.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.